Yes, yes.
All right, let's jump into it. Title II, is it for you? It is. Raise your hand if you are doing Title II or being tasked to soon do Title II. Okay, majority of the room, that is good. If you have access to the Title II project in GEMS and you want to pull it up, you want to look at the 24 project that should be in the director approved status. It may help you as I talk through some of it. 25, Title II is not due until the end of the month, so it might be in the process. Curious how many of you new folks are having to do the Title II 25? Not already done, coming to the role. All right. If you need assistance with that, email me. If you don't know your program manager, we'll see how we can assist you if it's your first time. If you don't know who your program manager is, if you want to talk to me before you leave today, I can give that information as well. They will handhold you through the process. That is coming up. Same thing for Title IV. You're having to write that point. We can help you as well. Is Title II for you? It is. It can support you and the teachers. If you are looking in GEMS, you'll see that on the sections page, it looks similar to Title I. A lot of the links look similar, but then there are some that are different. One of the differences is there is a class size reduction link that has to be filled out if your district is doing any kind of class size reduction activity down in the budget. So you would have to enter in like the names of the certified teachers who you are using as a class size reduction teacher. And you have to enter information on that teacher because the program manager is actually going to go into the certification portal. They're going to look at the information you put in against what is in the portal to make sure everything is square. And then you actually do a little bit of math in that link, saying what the class size was prior to the teacher and what the class size will be after the addition of that teacher. That is different than Title I. In Title I, you just write it in. But in Title II, there is a specific link. That is because a lot of Title II funds are used for class size reduction. So that's one of the changes on the sections page in Title II versus Title I. So some of the links look similar, and then some of them are very specific to Title II. So what is the purpose of Title II? It is to increase student achievement consistent with the academic standards from the state. Number two, to improve the quality and effectiveness of the teacher. You know, they're supposed to be ever learning as well. You have to provide what they need to make sure they're on the cutting edge of education. So Title II can fund the professional development that is needed to keep them on the cutting edge for education. Increase the number of teachers and principals who are effective in improving student academic achievement in schools. and provide low-income and minority students greater access to effective teachers and principals. So you kind of see the correlation between 1 and 2 right there. It is for the kids, but it's specific. It is to allow those students to have access to effective teachers and principals. Okay, stakeholder involvement, same thing for Title I. You're going to pull together all the people who are decision makers in the district. And not sure if it's 2 or 4, the application actually has a checkbox for you under stakeholder, in it too. Yeah, you have to click. Okay, got teacher, principals, students, you have to click that you have certain people at the table having these conversations about the Title II funding. And so from a monitoring standpoint, you want to keep the sign-in sheets every time you call those people to the table. You can put them into the related documents section of the grant if you want to for the monitoring team, or you can hold them when they come in the field. They're going to match what is in that link to the documentation that you have or have met to discuss how we're going to use these funds to meet the need. Notice this one, LEAs must prioritize Title II funds to schools that are CSI and TSI, or that have the highest percentage of economically disadvantaged students. There will also be a link in the Title II GEMS project that asks you how you chose who's being served. So you will check that off as to how that was determined and who is being served. Title II is maintained at the district level. Okay, it is not pushed out to the schools. So they're not going to have their own budgets for Title II. It's handled by you at the district level. So you don't have to worry about having like an allocation to the served schools link, because it's not going to go directly to the schools. The schools, of course, benefit, but it's handled at the district level. So what are some allowable uses of this funding? Initiatives to recruit and retain teachers. This goes back to necessary and reasonable. Okay, so you can do incentives to recruit them and to retain them, as long as there's a district policy associated and what you're doing is deemed necessary and reasonable. I use the example of like Greenwood 51, where Shoals may be doing something for recruiting teachers, because I know from personal experience, I could drive 45 minutes up into Greenville County, right? So that might be something they look at, like how can we recruit teachers and how can we retain them? PD, to increase teacher knowledge and improve instruction in the classroom. PD, to improve the quality of instructional leadership teams, principals, and other school leaders. In a little bit, we'll talk about what's the definition of other school leaders. Multiple career paths and teacher advancement initiatives. Okay, what does that look like? Here you go. You have it scripted for you. Recruiting, hiring, and retaining. You could do signing bonuses, expert help in screening candidates and enabling early hiring, differential and incentive pay in high-need academic subject areas or specialty areas, recruitment, fair registrations and travel, induction and mentoring programs for new educators, training on how to accurately differentiate performance, provide useful feedback, and use evaluation results to inform decision-making about PD, etc. Class size reduction, compensation for teachers for their increased leadership roles and responsibilities. It's just some examples. goals. You can also find others in the allowable use of funds guidance. Here are more. So these slides go into detail a little more than that document. So I would encourage you to keep these on hand as you write the plan. Okay, class size reduction. Notice that class size reduction cannot be used for gifted or special ed programs. Also, federal funds cannot be used to meet state or local class size requirements. This one also goes by the old supplement, not supplant. So you're coming on top of what the district is expected to do. Right? They have to meet that defined minimum for themselves, and then federal can come on top of that. Okay. These are some documents that the monitoring team might request if they come out to visit you surrounding class size reduction. You can put those things in the related documents, or you can hold them. They can ask for them when it's time to be audited. What does PD mean? What's the definition of PD? Jennifer, I want to fund some PD. What's the definition of it? Number one, an integral part of the district's strategies for providing educators with the knowledge and skills necessary to enable students to succeed in a well-rounded education and to meet challenging state standards. Most of the time, any kind of PD that I see fits that definition. Number two, we talked about this yesterday. It has to be sustained, not a standalone, a one-day or a short-term workshop. If you want to do a one-day, you need to put it in Title I. Okay, Title II is supposed to be sustained, professional development, intensive, collaborative, job-embedded, data-driven, classroom-focused. Very specific. Okay. PD for teachers, does it improve content knowledge? Does it improve instructional practices such as the following? So when you get ready to pull up a PD, or whoever above you says, can you fund this PD? I feel like it will fit the need. I'm bringing this one to the table. This is your guide to see, like, okay, does it fit the bill for Title II to fund that? If you are sending teachers to a PD and you need a substitute to cover while they're at the PD, Title II can pick that up as well. Okay, this gets into giving a teacher like a supplement, stipend, or having the substitutes in while they're out. Just keep in mind that the district should have a policy on how much their stipends are and what. So when a project is turned in, your program manager may ask to see that, upload the policy for me so that I can see what the district guidelines are for stipends, funding amounts, and so on. Okay, can we buy supplies? Title I, you can buy classroom supplies all day long. Title II, remember to keep it in mind that it's pretty much for the adults in the building. So if you're doing supplies, I would have it linked to the professional development that is being offered. Okay, but it is a little bit specific. Okay, so let's look at the examples. You may purchase PD books or a book study on a topic that aligns with the needs assessment. You may not purchase books to stock a PD library. Now, you would think that you could. Think like, what's the difference, right? So this is why these little slides are so handy. They want whatever is purchased to be associated with what you are providing to the teacher with, like, training associated. May purchase a calculator for teachers to use during PD on math content. But you may not purchase a classroom set of calculators for the teacher to implement the strategies learned. Okay, so this is that conversation that I said about knowing which grant does what. So when you come to the table, you say, okay, girl, I got the PDF books for that. And the calculators per teacher, the Title I girl, you better pick it up for classroom sets of calculators. So you come to the table and say, I got this piece, can you get that piece? If it's different people running the grants, right? Now, if it's just you, you look at the grants and say, okay, I can do this out of Title II, I can do this out of Title I. So this is the part of learning the allowability of each grant. Look at the last one. This goes back to what we talked about yesterday. Positions. If fully funded by Title II, all the duties must be Title II allowable. Okay, I know how it works. I understand how other duties as assigned works. Some might be PMS too. But when audited, they may say, you know, what all do you do? And so keep in mind that if it's a 1.0 FTE, it must be Title II allowable. Okay, PD for leadership. Who may use the funding? Teachers, instructional leadership teams, principals, other school leaders. Who is that? An employee or officer of an elementary or secondary school, district, or other entity operating an elementary or secondary school, and the person is responsible for the daily instructional leadership and managerial operations in the elementary or secondary school building. So you would have to determine that based upon those definitions right there. Okay. We actually had a conversation with a law firm that we consult with out of DC, and we talked about this definition. So after that, this is what we came up with. Any kind of assistant principal, department, or grade level chairperson, media center specialist, school counselor may be considered a school leader if the definition fits. Notice this one says superintendents. PD to help principals and superintendents become outstanding managers and educational leaders. Development and support of academics to help talented, aspiring principals or superintendents. Again, it's kind of going back to like the adults in the building, right? If you want to help advance them, these are some allowable activities. We talked about transferability earlier whenever I went over the Title V grant. It stands exactly the same for Title II, the procedures that I described before lunch, the exact same thing across all the grants. One thing I did fail to mention before lunch is when you get ready to transfer, you have to think about how that will affect reservations, like equitable services or Title I parent-family engagement. If you transfer $10,000 into Title I, that might change to 1% parent-family engagement, right? So down in your budget, you have to bring up that reservation amount by how much you transfer over. You have to think about that for equitable services too. Highly qualified. HR requirements were removed from law. LEA should hire teachers who are properly certified for their teaching assignments. And there is an IOI report that is associated with this, but keep in mind that whoever you're hiring needs to be properly certified. It is the parent's right to know who's teaching their child. They can ask, you can notify about what the certifications are. It says you must notify the parent in a format that is understandable, in a medium that will reach all the parents, and in a language that the parents will understand. Ensure the notification includes the principal's contact information, the school or LEA's name, and the date of the notification. You have to notify them about their child's teacher, whether the teacher has met the certification requirements for the grade level and subject area they're teaching, whether the teacher is teaching under an emergency or other provisional status, college major, and any graduate certification or degree held by the teacher, if services are being provided by paraprofessionals, qualifications, parents have a right to know who's standing in front of their child. Title I schools. Title I schools are required to notify parents when their child is assigned to or taught for 20 or more consecutive days by a teacher who is not properly certified for that teaching assignment. Okay, we talked about supplement, not supplant. You're supposed to be coming on top of what is expected. Some resources for you about Title II. All right, now I'm going to let you talk to each other for a few minutes, and I've given you some talking points about Title II. What stands out to me about this particular grant? What am I still curious about? And do you know how your district currently uses Title II funding? So pick a bullet, have some conversation. I'm going to give you about 7 minutes. Go ahead. Title II talk.
I hope that each of you are actually able to get a benefit from the table talks that we're having. I hope that they're beneficial to you. Anybody have any questions up to this point? If not, we're going to move forward and I'm going to talk to you about private schools. Bye-bye. All right. Let's understand that private schools, every private school teacher, principals, assistant principals, they are actually entitled to get Title II as well. Your private school has to hold a non-profit status, and they're actually able to participate with you, or you can do, they can remain by themselves, but it will be, the funds will have to be managed by the district as for them. You cannot at any point let the private schools have any type of funding. You should be sending invitations to your private school, just like you do all of your meetings with your districts, the schools in your district, excuse me. But make sure that you are doing it within the geographical boundaries of this. The difference between Title I and Title, which basically is Title 8 Part F, which has your Title II or included in that, you're required to do it in the geographical boundaries. As for Title I, like I explained to you yesterday, you have to go outside of the boundaries if you have kids that are attending school outside of your typical district. But Title II and Title IV, you do not. Make sure that you're asking them if they want to be involved in the fiscal year. Make sure you're doing the mailings in a timely manner, and make sure your mailings are being sent out, being registered so you can receive a receipt. It's important that you have because all this documentation does need to be noted to your top two. Also, we've had, some monitoring situations before where we've been missing private schools that's been listed in Title I but not Title II. Started last year, moving forward, we should be adding all of your private school information to all of your title applications. So that's 1, 2, 4, and 5. Well, 1, 2, and 4. Just make sure that you have all of that added into your related documents under GIS. When you're calculating your Title II for your private schools, you need to make sure that you're doing your total number of private students as well as your public school students. You get the total number of students. Once you do that, you're going to take your allocation and divide it by the total number of students to get your per pupil amount. That per pupil amount will be multiplied by your students enrolled in the participating private school, and that's how you get your private school allocation. This is an example of the private school allocation. I'm not going to go through each and every line of it, but you can see how the calculation was made for your private school. I'll have to excuse me, I have sinus issue going on today, so it's nothing contagious, but it is a little sinus issue. All right, moving forward. The private school should have a needs assessment just like all of your schools have needs assessments. During your timely and meaningful consultation, you need to make sure that you are speaking with the leaders of the private school. You're going to be documented it just like you have a meeting with all of your stakeholders within the the public school sector. There needs to be sign-in sheets, minutes, and of course, meeting notifications need to be in there as well. Discuss their needs assessment and figure out what it is that they want to do with this Title II, and it needs to be, where the money needs to go around the needs assessment. Private school officials should provide input in the planning of the LEA's program and activities. So students needs inform the professional learning needs of teachers and principals. What services will be offered, how, where, and by whom the services will be provided, and just make sure that you know that how the services will be assessed. So when you're talking to these private schools and doing their consultation, you just need to make sure that you're having an open line of communication with them and being honest with them and telling them everything step by step from the beginning to the end when it comes down to them receiving the funds and how they will get it and what activities they can actually participate in. Title II funds may be used for professional development. This professional development can be done with your school, or they can go to other PDs that they can select. But these PDs will have to be approved by you before they attend, because there are certain ones that can have a faith-based conference. Now, Title II will pay for anything that is not according to the faith-based. So you need basically an agenda of what's going to happen for that particular PD. Once you decide, and it is up to you as the LEA to find out if you're going to pay for it. I mean, if you can deny it, I mean, it all depends on what it looks like, and it falls in line with what we have for consideration for public school PD as well. So if you have one that does, I'm trying to think of a situation where we had one where part of the day, half of the day was dealing with, in New York at a performing arts area. This is for an arts teacher who does basically the dance and everything. Now, they wanted to go to all of the shows that they could participate with. PD had these different Broadway shows they could attend. Well, we know entertainment is not going to be paid. So the school could actually pay for the attending of the workshops. But as far as for the teacher going to attend the Broadway shows, it had to be something that the private school picked up on their own. So that's the way that you're going to have to look at it and divide it into it. So whatever you're going to do for your private school, your public schools, it falls true for your private schools. Private schools, of course, you cannot use funds for class size reductions. And that means basically because we don't pay for any of the salaries of private school teachers. You can have tutors in there, but the tutors will have to go through you and you set it up. They can't be tutors that they have. Districts cannot reimburse the private school directly. Only the district may, be obligated to expend the funds. So the district must procure the services, you must purchase the materials, and you must reimburse individual teachers or principals. No, the private school itself cannot receive any money. In terms of timelines of the grant, this should be discussed during your initial consultation. What you need to make sure is that you're discussing with the private school that they do have opportunity to use this money up until that full year, the funds of that for the full year. I mean, I've had situations where districts have had calls because they've been having problems communicating with the private schools, or they're not stepping up to the plate to use the funds or utilize the funds. We cannot tell them they cannot apply or they cannot ask for the grant. But if you're having issues with them, the thing that I tell you is to do your documentation and make sure you're having your communication level. That's all I can tell you. It's important that we're having the meaningful consultation, which means, yes, you're going to stay on top of them to ensure that they're sure they're spending their funds. You do that with your public schools when there's time for Title I, Title II to ensure that this principals and stuff are using their funds. You need to do the same thing with the private school because after all, this is a part of your job as an LEA. Once you got to the point where they're not going to use the funds, they can deny them at any time. That does not stop them from participating in the previous year, but if they deny it, Title I requires that you go back and redistribute the private school funds that was denied to any other schools that are participating. If you only have one school participating in Title I, then their funds will automatically go back to the district. You have to get letters stating from your other schools that they're denying it, they don't want to participate before you can pull it back for Title I. Title II, you can take it, they can give you a letter saying that they are denying it and you're good with having the funds just pulled back to the district. Any questions about private schools? If not, I'm not going to hold the train any longer. We're going to move on to the chart. Leslie Belos is the one that actually handles all of our charter schools. But I wanted to talk with you today in her absence about the charter schools. Charter schools in South Carolina are public schools, either charter is held in the district of SCTC, TCIE, or Limestone. If your district holds a charter, treat the charter school like you would any other school in your district. And if it's a part of the SDPC, SD, TCIE, or Limestone, the charter school will receive Title II services through them. The requirement has not been met. This requirement has not been met, removed from law, excuse me. Must notify the parents in a format that is understandable and that will reach all the parents. Ensure the notification includes the principal's contact information. Of course, the school, the LEA name, and of course the date of the notification. Parents' rights to know. Also, with the parents' rights to know, you must notify parents that they may request the following information regarding any type of any information on the child's teacher. Whether the teacher has met the South Carolina certification, whether the teacher is teaching on any emergency or provisional status, a college major, or any graduate certification, and whether the student is whether the student is providing services by a paraprofessional. Please note that the LEAs are required to notify parents and the children Title I when that sounds familiar, or Title I when their child is assigned to or taught for 20 or more consecutive days by a teacher who is not properly certified by the teaching assignment. Transferability of funds. LEAs may transfer funds from Title II and Title IV. Of course, we know about the transfer funds to the Title I, migrant, M&D, Title II, III, IV, and V. LEAs must consider how the transfer will impact the required set asides. And again, like Jennifer said, equitable services is a part of the transfer. Prime example, if you're going to have your transfer all of your Title II to Title I, which we know nobody's going to do that. But if you're having to notify the private schools, you're required as well to let them know that it's going to be transferred. And yes, you're not going to be able to participate in the Title II because it will no longer be considered Title II. Transfer forms should always be updated and uploaded if changes occur. If we receive additional funds, you need to make sure that your transfer form is updated to reflect the new total that you have, and it must be submitted when you do your amendments. Any questions about charter schools? Yes. This is for all of the programs. Any other group?
The children in the class for their tuition. Yes, like if the child being served by the fund is not properly certified, you're going to notify the parent of those children not being called by a certified person. That's the communicated letter, but I know that goes to. Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? All right, we got a little good stuff going on over to Title IV. So you keeping me again until Title IV. Hope that's okay. All righty, Title IV. Let's give a little background on Title IV. Under Part 1 of Title IV, Part 8, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 65 was reauthorized, of course, by every student back in 2015. The South Carolina Department of Education first introduced the grant as the 2018. That Title IV was actually done in 2018 here at South Carolina Department of Education. In general, the department allocates the SSAE program funds to states by formula based on each state's share under the Title I Part A. FBAs award the SSAE sub-grants to LEAs by the formula in the same proportion as the LEAs prior year Title I allocation. Now your LEA allocations, this is actually the Reserve State Administration, which is 1% of the LEA allocations. State level activities is 2% of the total. Part of the LEA allocations 97%, remainder of the total. All right, period of performance. Each grant is open for a 27 period. Let's look at 22. Let's look at 23, which is on September 30th of 24. You see the 24 grant, the 25 grant, all of them September 30th, which you see the following years after 2025 and 2026. The state fiscal year ends June 30th. Therefore, the claims through June 30th of each year must be submitted in gaps by August 15th. Have you heard that before? Supplement not the plan. The Title IV funds must be used only to supplement educational programs provided with state and local funds. The LEA may not use Title IV funds to pay for activities that, in the absence of these funds, would be provided with state and local funds. So you know we got supplement not the plan with every grant. You see, if you haven't noticed that, it's a true statement. Let's talk about the record retentions for the Title IV. All financial and programmatic records and supporting documents must be kept for 6 years after the expiration of the grant. If there's any litigation claim, negotiation, audit, anything like that, records must be retained until the resolution or until the end of the 6-year period, whichever is the length. Transferability of funds, of course, they may be transferred to other EFA funds, programs, excuse me. The funds will transfer by subject to, become subject to the rules of the title of the grant that they actually being transferred to. Your Title IV program managers must be notified in writing by the LEA to transfer the funds to another grant. And of course, transfer funds must align with the allocation amount, update and re-upload when necessary. Transferability of funds allowability. Title IV funds can be transferred to the following programs: 1, 2, 3, and 5, if your district is the recipient of Title V funding. A content area overview. For your Title IV, you have 3 main content areas that you have to focus on with your Title IV funding. Of course, it is, the program is intended to improve student academic achievement and increasing of the capacity of South State Educational Association. We need to provide all students with the access of a well-rounded education, improve school conditions for student learning, and improve the use of technology in order to improve the academic achievement. This is a diagram of a district that has received 30,000 or above funds, and this is how you should be actually dividing your money up to make sure you're covering the 3 content areas. You have your well-rounded, your safe and healthy, which has to receive at least 20%. Technology should not receive more than 60%. But within that, you've got to have at least 85% of that, which will go towards your professional development, which is related to technology. Did you understand that? And the diagram, if you have your PowerPoint, you can see where they have the 60% for technology, but we need to make sure that professional development is going to receive 85% of what that 60% is. Any questions? Here's a percentage example showing you $60,000 was the allocation. Well-rounded could receive 15,000. Safe and healthy would not be more than 20,000. Your technology use would be 25,000, but of that 25,000, you got 21,250 should be spent in professional development and technology infrastructure will only receive 3,750. Any questions?
But if we transfer it, we don't worry about the percentages. It'll go with what the new title is, is that right?
If you're going to it would take on that characteristic of the title that you're transferring to the branch you're turning it into.
But the intention for the Department of Ed is really for it to stay where it is. They do not advocate for transferring unless, it's really justifiable. They want it to be true to the grants that you're getting. sometimes when Title IV first came out, we saw a lot of people just, I'm gonna transfer it to REAP. And, you know, it was perceived that it was an easier, you know, set of the process. But as time has gone on since 2018, they very much encouraged it to stay within that grant, and we have to report on how many districts transfer it out of Title IV into something else. So if it works for your district to leave it there, I encourage you to actually do Title IV for its purposes.
If you're purchasing device or equipment for an actual STEM activity that falls under well-rounded, since it's a device that actually go to STEM, or does it have to be that 15% under?
It really depends on how it's written up, and your program manager would read it, and then they would tell you where they feel like it would fall best. So I would contact them prior to the submission of the grant, so you're not doing double work.
Any other questions? This content area allowability form, if you're, with your PowerPoint, you click on it, it is a very useful tool because it gives you a lot of information about allowability for Title IV in your well-rounded and your safe and healthy. So I encourage you to click on it and download it and keep it as one of my handy sheets on the side. Well-rounded, the content area one for well-rounded is improving access to foreign language instruction and arts. This is basically giving you all of what you need to think about when you're trying to do well-rounded and decide what needs to go up on that and would be allowable. Like promoting access to accelerated learning opportunities, including advancing, the AP, International Bachelor's IB, strengthening instruction in American history, civics, engineering, and of course, environmental education. All of your well-rounded categories that you would think about for the students. For safe and healthy, we're thinking about things that are school-based, mental health services. You want to think about things that is going to establishing, improving dropout prevention, not reading the law specifically, but implementing systems and practices to prevent bullying and harassment. So anything that you think about that is going to deal with the safe and healthy part for your child, this is where you would think about it under this content area. And of course, areas of technology, we need to look at that as well, providing students in rural, remote, and undeserved areas with the resources to benefit from high quality digital learning opportunities. Here's technology and what the funds can be used to help educators learn how to use technology. To increase the engagement of multilingual learners, students, and then communication with parents and caregivers. An LEA could choose to purchase and implement professional learning platform or a software that would support virtual coaching. So educators in rural areas, isolated communities, serve schools, and or who are the sole teachers in their school or district for particular content, such as the arts of STEM, and they especially benefit from such implementations. Again, here is a chart for the allowable uses of funds, and you can, that chart is on your PowerPoint. It shows you what you would be considered evidence-based activities for safe and healthy, evidence-based activities for technology, and of course, the access for and opportunities for the children under well-rounded education. Now, there were some changes that were done on the details page of GEMS. And if you focus on the one where the yellow line arrow is located, special rule for infrastructure funds specific to infrastructure cannot exceed 50% of the amount allocated to technology. So you had the 60%, which means 85% of that could be used, and then the additional 15 would be considered, infrastructure. Alrighty, also there's the yellow arrows that point to the part on the program's detailed page that's reminding you again about at least 85% of the educational technology, must be done in the PD of it. There is a supposed to check if the proposed grant includes expenditures of technology infrastructure as well. So if you're having any type of infrastructure, when you're putting it into the application, you must check that box and then of course put the amount that is supposed to be there. Keeping in mind not to get over the 15%. Any questions? Needs assessment. Planning for Title 4 Part A. We want to step one, determine the activities based on the identified needs. You're gonna make sure that you're writing high quality objectives and outcomes, continuously monitor and evaluate the objectives, and of course, publicly report the outcome. For determining the activities based on individual needs, we have to make sure it's needs versus wants. It's easy to focus on your allocation of dollars amount and trying to use it for something like nice to have program. But the intent of the program is to make sure that you are determining the needs of the school. And of course, provide students support and academic enrichment. The LEA may use the information for a comprehensive needs assessment to align for Title 4 Part A. And then there's flexibility and room for innovation. But all activities need to be based on a demonstrated need. Determining activities based on identified needs. Of course, you want to establish a planning team. It's basically your stakeholders again. Identify the data sources. Make sure you analyze the data and identify the needs for the students. Develop conclusions and of course plan the Title 4 program. Stakeholders. Who are your stakeholders? Basically the same thing that Jennifer outlined in Title 2. You got teachers, principals, parents, students, local government representatives, and of course all of them need to be represented as far as for your signing sheets and meetings and agendas. Identifying a data source, well-rounded education, enrollment in a non-math and ELA subjects, art and physical education, program offerings, AP, IB, dual credit, student supporting offerings, and of course, student achievement results. More identifying data sources that you can use when it comes down to the safe and healthy for students. Student engagement, your attendance, your dropout rates. Identify reports like fights, assaults, bullying. The school-based service providers, nurses, counselors, social workers, and of course, other measures specific to the LEA. For identifying sources that you have for your technology. We need to, the technology access inventory and internet speed, connecting devices, of course, the blending, use blended learning courses, classrooms, online courses, and of course, other measures specific to the LEA. We need to make sure you're analyzing data and developing conclusions. These are some of the questions you should consider when you're doing your analysis of your data and of course coming to your conclusions. What do schools need to be prioritized for each category? What categories are showing the most need and where is your gap in access? And of course, how will the desired outcomes be measured? We write a high quality objective and outcome. Now for this, we need to make sure that Our objectives are incremental steps that your district needs to take to achieve the outcomes. When you're writing out your high-quality objectives, make sure the outcomes, which is the results you expect for the program that you're actually wanting to do. The logic models are frameworks that show the relationship between the key elements of the program. And of course, SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, and of course, inclusive and equitable. All of this goes up to when you come into writing your logic model, which is your evaluation roadmap. The purpose of this is to actually improve the student's academic achievement by increasing the capacity of the LEAs to provide all students with access to well-rounded education, improve school conditions for the student learning, and of course, improve the technology in order to improve the academic achievement. A logic model is required for you to have with all of your Title IV applications. You need to make sure you have these logic model components when you're going to turn this in. It should contain the inputs, the activities, the benchmarks, the short-term outcomes, and your long-term outcomes. This is a logic model evaluation roadmap. Not going to read each one of them, but you see we have the needs, the activities, the objectives, and the outcome. Number of objectives and outcomes. Of course, one objective and outcome for the entire application. You need to make sure that one for each priority content area, as well as the individual objective. And of course, you would have to have a combination of the above. You can have a combination of the above. I apologize for that. For the continuously monitoring and evaluating of objectives. The final step for improving the effective implementation is to examine how the activity is working, and then of course use that information to make decisions for the next steps. Performance, monitoring, and rigorous evaluations. You need to answer questions about the impact. And of course, these activities should produce information that should be used to guide your future investments. This is an example of your logic model. And this is a template that was used by one of our districts. We have the problem that they've addressed, which is the graduation rate. You see where they have the sub-problems. There's the goals and their objectives. And of course, the activities, they have it listed, the output measures. Then we have the outcome measures for short-term and long-term. And this type of problem is required for your Title IV applications. Any questions? Here's another example, too, of the logic model. And it just listed a different way to have the same inputs that need to be, that are required for the logic model. Problems, sub-problems, goals, objectives, activities, output measure, benchmarks, short-term and long-term outcomes. Step 3 will be your continuous monitoring and evaluation. The final step of improving effective implementation is to examine how the activity is working and then use that information to make decisions for your next steps. Make sure you're doing performance monitoring, rigorous evaluations, and these activities produce information that should be used to guide future investments. Continuous monitoring and evaluating objectives. Research conclusions that inform the next Title IV program plan. Should the activities continue or be replicated in other schools? Should the priority be shifted to the other Title IV categories? Do the intended outcomes needed to be adjusted? And should the budget for each Title IV category shift?
Give her a little break. We have to publicly report on Title IV. And you will find this on our website under Title IV. There's specific things that we have to collect data on. So I'm going to get into some of those specifics, but I'm going to let you have a little bathroom break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the evaluation pieces and what that looks like on our end and what it should look like on your end. Okay, let's take about a 5 to 7 minute restroom.